Yeah, the quality of people that you work with, especially during a career, are really important because they will make the difference between something being a crisis and completely going off the rails and something being a challenge you can overcome together. I have learned, this is not something I wish I knew earlier, because there's really no way I could have learned earlier or needed to know it earlier, but there's very rarely a catastrophe in work unless you're working with something really. There are some careers where things are catastrophes, but very rarely is something, at least in my line of work. And there's always more solutions than you think that there are. And so many times on projects, I, especially younger, be like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. I have no idea how we're gonna, we have this deadline and we're not gonna meet the deadline and this isn't going right. And I've been fortunate to have wiser, more experienced people say, okay, you're not gonna meet the deadline. What deadline can you meet? Like, we can move a deadline? Yeah. What? It's all, now I know we can move a deadline. So now it's in my list of solutions to balance as we go forward. I remember having a project where I was doing process design. We were trying to put in this new line to make bread, and there was a big oven, and we were tearing out a bunch of equipment and putting in new, but some of it we were leaving in place. And so the oven was one that we wanted to leave in place because it was newer and it was expensive, and okay, we don't want to move the oven. But we were having a really hard time fitting everything into the physical layout with what we had left. So I remember telling my manager, man, it's really hard to fit all this in. And he said, well, what about the oven? And I said, well, we can't move the oven. He said, oh, yes, you can. It will be expensive, but that oven will move if you need it to. And it's all about your trade-offs. So there will become a point at which it is more desirable to move that oven than to try to do what you're trying to do with this thing. And that just blew my mind because I didn't even know that was an option. So he taught me that there's always an option on the table. It may not be a great one, but there is always another option for you to consider.